Morris Power again. My worst fear has been realized. I have discovered that there are two medical care systems in this province, and the private system is growing at the expense of the public system, unfortunately. I found this out when I was in the ER last night. I picked up a copy of the Toronto Sun someone had left, and a little letter to the editor from a courageous nurse alerted me to this. I went back and found that for over a year, the Sun, which appeals to working people, especially the working poor, has been trying to tell them that this is a good thing, that the new private hospitals and clinics that they can't afford will relieve the load on the public system. And this nurse wrote in to say, no, that's not true. In fact, they're already drawing qualified medical personnel away from the public system, making the crisis worse. I've also discovered through a friend of a friend that the Community Care and Access Center workers have been warned by the Wynne government that they're thinking of discontinuing the community care system, the public system, entirely. If they do that, I and other poor people won't be able to get intravenous care, wound care, etc. in the home. There's no room for us in the hospitals, and the hospitals aren't really authorized to do that on an extended basis anyway, even if we went in every day. And in fact, we'll be under a death sentence. If I survive this, then the next time, if it happens and there's no community care available, no community medical care, that's it. I do believe that there's some hope, though, and I'll explain that. First of all, the cynical editor at The Sun replied to the letter saying, yeah, we'd all like better health care, but there's no money. Where are we going to get the money? Public debt is enormous, etc. Is a way of saying, don't resist. Okay, the resistance is useless. But in the same issue of the paper, Sunday, February 5th, 2017, they had an article mocking top-level bureaucrats who've just been released from a 5-year pay restriction, and they're giving themselves, when they can, huge increases, 40% and more. One community college president, now this isn't university, it's a little 2-year community college, 2 years after high school usually. She's boosting her pay from $350,000 a year to just under $500,000, and she thinks she deserves it. She looks up at all the people above her, and why not? Surely she deserves something like they're making. There's a government organization called Ontario Hydro that's caused tremendous misery and even death in this province by failing to anticipate demand for hydro electricity properly. They thought we were all stupid and couldn't save high electricity. We did it. Demand's been going down, and now they're stuck. They put out expensive multi-year contracts for additional energy. They can't get out of them, and now they're having to dump this on the ratepayers. It's tripled electric rates in some of the rural areas. You can imagine the consequences. The new chair brought in to head this fine organization is about to receive $4 million, just under $4 million a year. That's an obscenity. It's a crime against humanity in the present circumstances. I said to my friend, it's as though they've been existing in a bubble of reality, and it's now so swollen that it's broken away from the underlying reality, and like a great Hindenburg, I call it the great pretense, it's drifting ever upward, and they can't even see those below them anymore. That's not a bad analogy, actually. There's a book by a man named John Searle, The Creation of Social Reality, who speaks about how many things we think are real are actually in our minds, but it's our collective minds. We create, by a sort of consensus, these social realities. Marriage is one that he gives an example of. Jeremy Rifkin, an English scientist, has written about memes, powerful ideas that grab the mind. I think these two go together. And I think millions of years ago, as our species was evolving, when the brain got so big everybody could do their own thing, we had to develop a mechanism. Every ancestor of ours back to the apes has been a communal species. They survived by building and maintaining communities. And the way we did that was to come up with this social reality. The problem is the cleverest among us, the most narcissistic among us, the parasites, I call them, predatory people among us, can manipulate the social reality to their own benefit. And the more money and power they have, and that's getting out of control today for those at the top, the better they can manipulate the system. Like the Sun convincing people whose health care was going to be ruined, robbed, that it was a good thing that was happening. But there is hope. My friend sadly said to me, it's unsolvable. It's all those rich immigrants that are causing the problem. And this is something I think they've almost been encouraged to believe. I said to him, first of all, I reminded him that without the immigrants that have come to this province in the last 30 years, he and I wouldn't be receiving Canada Pension and OAS, Old Age Security, because the systems would have collapsed if only our children had to support that burden. He even told me of a young man in my area who had lost his income, fallen on terrible times, gotten addicted, and now he can't get help for his addictions because all the addiction facilities have been discontinued, the publicly funded ones. Oh, if he had many, many tens of thousands, I understand it's 50 or 60 minimum now, he could get into a privately funded addiction clinic, sure. But the point is, immigrants are not the problem. But by putting in penalties for racist comments, they're actually isolating native-born Canadians from the immigrants by making them afraid to talk to them. I said, talk to them. I've talked to them. Most of them aren't doing even as well as native-born Canadians. They're struggling even more. There are only a very few rich immigrants, and they're not the problem. I used to think they were the cause of the housing bubble in this country. Houses have gone up from 60, 70,000 in the 80s to 1 million and more today in the Toronto area in particular. But they're not the problem. That's due to speculators buying and flipping houses after renting them. It's due to wealthy boomers of my generation, those who did make vast sums of money, especially when they sold their house trying to get into the condo market, which is soaring. And it's due to young people desperate to own their first home who are mortgaging themselves up impossibly high, running up all their credit cards. And if the mortgage interest rates even go up a bit, they won't be able to carry it. So it's not immigrants. He also told me how the problem isn't going to affect him because he and his wife have stumbled upon a super diet that's going to keep them out of the hands of the medical care system. This is sad. This man is 67 years old. He just had a major medical procedure last year, but his new diet is going to keep him out of... What he's saying is, I'm smarter than all the rest. I'm going to survive when everybody else goes. And it's sad. I told him, behind that superiority, I think I smell an odor the rich love to scent, and that's the odor of fear you won't allow yourself to feel. Okay, you see, come up with these schemes to convince yourself it doesn't apply to you. But we only don't feel our fear in that way, and have to block it out. When we're afraid, we'll have to feel it alone, and that's just intolerable. It's the isolation. I said to him, if you could start talking to those immigrants, and especially if all of us can start talking to those below us in society. It's no use trying to talk to those above you. They'll just tell you they're all right, Jack, and smirk that they're going to survive when you won't, secretly. Talk to the people at the bottom, the elderly poor, people like me. We have no choice but to feel our fears. We can't block them out. But we'll be hostile at first because so many of the wealthier have used us to make themselves feel good about how they're helping the poor and then just abandon us. But if you can get to know people at this level, get them to voice their fears, that will encourage you to go to your neighbors and just say hello to maybe the poorest in your neighborhood and get them to voice their fears, and then you'll be able to share your fears. When we're in this state, it's like sleepwalking. Our brains actually release chemicals that keep us from seeing reality. And if you talk to people and bring your fears out, that will pop the bubble of your sleepwalking, and then you can work politically to pop the bubble that those at the top are living in. I said to my friend, if enough of us start saying the emperor has no clothes, as in the fable, maybe we can do something. But you've got to start rebuilding community first. And it starts from the bottom. Get to know people at the bottom of society. Don't just walk on by. Help them if you can, if you have any resources. And then you and your neighbors are going to have to form caring groups, just like they did in the dirty 30s, just like people did then, and help each other. And that will give you the courage to start changing the political process. The wonderful thing about social reality is it can be changed very quickly. In the crash of '29, everybody knew that nothing could be done. And then in the States, by 1932, FDR got elected, and his New Deal began to do something about it because people's attitudes had changed. So please get out there, start rebuilding the community that has been shattered before it destroys our civilization, that shattering. And I hope you will all be able to do something about this. Good luck, and thank you, as always, for watching this rather longer video.